founder and editor of Aziza magazine, the women's magazine. And when they asked me about Aziza magazine, I said, Aziza did for me what Ebony did for me as a child. It showed people how brilliant and beautiful Muslim women were. And that's what Ebony did for us as a people. It instilled pride. When President Carter was invited by Islam to speak at their convention, one of them asked the question, how should we address it? How can we counter Islamophobia in the U.S.? And Jimmy Carter's response was, you need to study the African American. Imam Muhammad was always in all peace initiatives. One of the most memorable trips I had the opportunity to make with him was when he went to, we still call Palestine. It was still on the map, even though I remember when they took it off of the physical maps in '91. There was no more maps made with Palestine listed on it. It was just Israel. And he eventually met with Yasser Arafat, and he came home and he began to advance and promote more vocally the Palestinian cause. But besides us, the Native American Indians and the Palestinians, that's the next worst situation I've ever seen. Of course, we always remember the Focolare and Imam Muhammad's special relationship with Lady Kiara Lubick and our continuous relationship with them as we continue to make those trips to fellowship with the Focolare abroad. Marriage is half of faith. And please don't ask me why I'm not married. I have to introduce you to my ex-husband. Yeah. And I just, it takes a while. That's all I can say. And then we'll back it up, but Allah blesses whom He pleases. So we'll move on. But our community is continuing the tenets of Islam, that marriage is half of faith, and that our Prophet's sunnah was to marry. And even if we are not able to carry out those tenets, we uphold the tenet. We uphold marriage even if we're not in a marriage. Whatever, we uphold progress, period, even if it's not our progress. One of our signature events for the Muslim Journal has become the Time to Be Grateful. We're in our 13th year going forward. We know that the industry is changing, and we narrate the story sometimes. Industries always change, and people always have to change with it. And one example was when the Model T cars, when Ford made it popular for everybody to get a car. What do you think the guy with a barn full of horses did? Now, his business has been built on horses, and that's his economy. But now you have a Model T Ford car coming out, and what is he going to do? Now, the same thing was said with the internet, of course. The internet has put 100-year-old papers out of business. The Washington Post, that was owned by a family for 100 and some years, just got bought out by Amazon. Christian Science Monitor, that got millions of followers, they only publish online. They don't print anymore. I think the Reader's Digest doesn't print anymore. One guy, our landlord in Homewood, they'll go over there and plead with him about reducing the rent. And he's a Greek, and he agreed, and he said, you know, when I leave here, I go down to Florida, and I go online, and I pull up the Chicago Tribune and Chicago newspapers. He said, I ain't bought a newspaper in 10 years. The industry is changing. So one of the things that we try to to move forward with and instill life was we need to move out. And how are we going to move out? One way we move out is with the Muslim Journal Time to Be Grateful dinners. So we move from city to city to keep the name out there, to do some branding, and to do some encouraging that we're still here. We'll do all those other high-tech new things also, but again, the world is fragile. It will be another industry next week that'll wipe that out, as some have. I think Facebook is holding on. Nobody hears of MySpace anymore. That's gone. Some people invested in social media and some high-tech social media. It lasted for a few years, then they went bankrupt. But you have to say that it has a momentum and a life of its own, the good, bad, and the ugly, because, again, we can't necessarily fact-check everything. It moves so fast, and people just put half-truths out there. You even have to go try to look behind the screen to see who's really writing this. Now they have a warning that if you get weird emails, just let your cursor hold over the name first to see if the address behind it will pop up, because the name that's there you might think is Amatullah Sharif, but if you just hold it there for a minute, the message is weird. If you hold it, something else will pop up as the actual address, and you'll know that it's spam. Our leader had vision. New Africa, can you see it? And we're going to hold on to the vision. All of these entities we have to uphold, reestablish. Now, the one thing about the trucking industry, we're trying to work on an article. The trucking industry came out of Muhammad Speaks for the Nation of Islam. They had the trucks that carried the papers around. One brother told me, he said, Aisha, an editor never sold a single newspaper. He said they printed it and took it to the back ramp, set it there. The paper captains picked them up and took them forward. FOI, that's what we celebrate, what we call the 300 man. Brother McHale, we have, how many did you sell? From Indianapolis. How many papers? Is he in here? Right there behind you. Yeah. How many papers did you sell? Yeah. Everywhere. In Muhammad Speaks, how many did you sell? Yeah. He was one of our 300 men. But we've had brothers who sold up to 1,000 papers. They get in a competition with each other. But out of the Muhammad Speaks, the trucking industry has also survived. Those who know Khalid Al-Amin out of Chicago, he was the last one to hold on to the trucking industry after the Muhammad Speaks plant closed. It was a spin-off business, and his sons now have Al-Amin Trucking, and they're back on the road. We'll always have a special love for Memphis because they treated us very well. I'm going to wind it down. Hope I can go back to that one. Bermuda. The Muslims in Bermuda, when we said we want to take the Muslim Journal dinner to Bermuda, people said, why? And then they said, ain't nobody going. And so we said, we're going to put out a survey. If we get 100 people to go with us, we're going. And so when we started talking to the Muslims in Bermuda, they said, our community started with the Muhammad Speaks. That's how we propagated, and that's how people learned about us, and that's how this community of Muslims in Bermuda grew. And they gave us the best time. This is all their original production. And they had that downtown Bermuda in the Civic Center downtown. And then we had dinner at the masjid in Bermuda. It was the island, you can walk across the island. But it was one of the best times we've had. And I attribute it to the fact that it's a tourist location, and they treated us with they wanted to pull out all the props like that we were this great tourist group, and they wanted to show us the best time. And we really enjoyed ourselves, and they did. Okay, that's out of the nation's mosque. When the wife of one of our Muslim pioneering veterans was recognized by the White House. You know what RTW means? Remake the world. The RTW Veteran Center in Chicago, and this is the house that they bought. They feed the homeless people. They feed the veterans. They offer classes for our youth on the street, computer classes. Daniel Habil and his wife, Anitha, run that facility. And they called it the RTW Veteran Center. And we have to remind them the RTW is remake the world. Again, recognizing our brothers who, and when we, Naeem Shaw, when we were doing the celebration of the brothers out of the Muhammad Speaks, people told us don't call them FOI because they think you with Farrakhan. We'll get confused. So we call them the 300 men. But they're the FOI. When Naeem Shaw was captain on the West Coast, he said, I got some men out here. You need to send that to me so I can get it out here. So he had people's families. The brothers are deceased, and their families came. All these people came to get this one little coin. And then their grandsons and their grandchildren started signing the board for their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers who were former FOI who were deceased. Sister Sophia Shaheed was, people don't know this either. Sister Sophia Shaheed, who used to be the former principal in the Atlanta schools, she was the last captain in Atlanta, Sisters Captain, MGT Captain, and she was the captain that I came in under. And all the captains were being set down. And I tell her, I remember when she said, I'm going to go over here and sit on the floor and show y'all what a follower looks like. Anybody remember Sister B? Yeah. She used to cook. Sister B used to cook, so people would go to her house to eat. I mean, she didn't have a restaurant. We would just show up at her house. Diane Nash. A little piece of history I don't think people know. Diane Nash worked for the Muhammad Speaks. You don't know who Diane Nash was. When they had the Freedom Riders coming down out of Fisk University, coming down through Alabama, when they were getting on those Freedom Ride buses, students, some crazy 21, 22-year-old students still didn't know what they were getting into. They were going to test the desegregation in the South and go sit in these bus stations and restaurants. One group coming out of Fisk was headed by Diane Nash. She was 20-some years old. And there had already been violence in Alabama. The Kennedys had already sent someone down to assess the situation, and the guy that they sent down was told, we got these busloads. These buses were being firebombed on the road. Some of them were firebombed before they got to their location. And he got word that they got a busload of students coming out of Fisk University, led by this girl named Diane Nash. And he got hold of her and told her, young lady, don't bring those people down here. You know y'all gonna get killed. And she told him, sir, everybody on this bus gave me their last will and testament before they got on the bus. And years later, she was hired by Elijah Muhammad as a copy editor at the Muhammad Speaks. We have brothers who lead Hajj groups. We have several Hajj groups. Again, 2 presidents sent condolences when our leader, Imam W.D. Muhammad, passed for his distinguished leadership. And I'm just going to leave it here until you can cut this off. We're going to have the slide set up at our booth. Again, we have a subscription drive going on. Not everything is rose. I don't want to give you the impression that everything is okay. I got a letter to send out to the imams. Sometimes we can talk ourselves to death. We can kill the spirit so much until we can't survive. People just give up on you. We've had some intense struggles recently.